Well, welcome everyone to our May demo day. First, I just wanted to point out the last demo day we covered quote creation within point of sale, which had not been released to production just yet. That is out there and available now. So if anyone has questions about that, just let us know. Today we'll highlight some of the upcoming features and a few things that have been released since our last demo day. And the web dev team has also started using OpenAI's new Codex toolset. So we'll be highlighting along the way how we've made use of some of that. So I'll get started here with a quick change that we made to production scheduling. Share my screen. All right, so on the production scheduling Gantt chart, we had a customer request for the ability to indicate when a work order or operation has an issue that needs to be dealt with. So we've introduced, and let me show where this exists in woe.e and also woe.control. So in woe.control, there's now an issue codes tab. And for the moment, we've fixed this to 5 codes that can be defined by the customer. We wanted to have a specific number so that later we could integrate logic to make specific changes happen automatically based on certain things occurring and having particular codes applied. But by default, there will be 5 codes defined and they will automatically populate as issue code 1 through 5. So that's on the woe.control side. And then in woe.e, there's now an issue code dropdown where you can apply an issue code to a work order from there. And then on the web, in the Gantt chart, you can click on an item and there is an issue code description there. So you can add and remove the issue code. Once it's been removed, the little exclamation will go away. I think I noticed a bug earlier. Yeah, we've got a quick bug that we need to resolve with validation on that issue code change. But if an issue code is assigned, there will be the little red exclamation there to indicate that there's a problem. So let me get back to my notes here. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to toss it over to Alex, who will show some additional production scheduling work that has occurred, and again, highlight some of our use of Codex. So Alex, so let's go ahead and do that. Christian, if you don't mind jumping in.
Screen in one moment. Okay, so today I'm going to be demonstrating the new ticketing and time module that will hopefully be released today. So as you know from the previous demo days, this is introducing the new more tab interface that allows you to open tickets, multiple tickets at a time. Oh, maybe not. Wait 1 second. This should be working.
Do it all here. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
that
fine.
might be a good idea.
Yep. So sorry about that. We'll send it back to Alex.
All right. Hopefully things are okay now. I can be heard.
We can't hear you.
Affirmative. We can hear you.
All right. What a relief. All right. So first, I'm going to show something that's a little unrelated to the production scheduling. Just a feature on point of sale that we've added. You now have in your settings in web an on-screen keyboard option here. And so if you enable this and then head over to point of sale, should work with quotes or orders. When you go to your part selection, you'll have this little button here that shows up on the search for parts. And so this is kind of if you already know what you want to search for, you can kind of just do this. And so this kind of helps out with I think it was like iPad minis and stuff where the keyboard might not pop up when you go in here. You want to just type in something. We're thinking about some iterations here to dismiss this once you've done the search, and maybe some other layout stuff here. But this, as it is right here, is already available, so available for use. All right, and then hopping over to production scheduling related things. So we have an upcoming change to add a production board. This is kind of big, so wide, kind of going in widescreen here. So we go into the production board, and so it automatically defaults to this week, and it's going to give you day by day a lookup report for what is scheduled for the work center, what work orders, and even some further information. This isn't quite the data we've been testing with, so I'm going to go back in time a little bit here. And so you can redo the search for any time range. You can also refresh if something has changed and you just want to refresh what you already see here. You can also collapse each of these if you want to kind of shrink things down and see further down a little more easily. And so we can see we have multiple items here, and it'll even show you what shift numbers. And this is based on the work center itself. So if a work center has, this work center has 2 shifts, so we're only going to get first and second shift, whereas we have another work center here, the inspection, that actually has 3 shifts. And it's also going to summarize this in terms of phases. So if you have multiple operations and each operation and these operations share the same alternate work center options, they're going to be considered to be the same phase. And so it's going to group these together. So here we've got actually operations A1, A2, and A3, all part of one phase that are assigned to this work center. And so it also gives you the option for all of the scheduling groups, and you'll see it actually even defaulted us to assembly, which will be the same as what you get over on scheduling. So you kind of got this persistent experience through here. And then taking this a step further, what we have in progress, if I can move the Teams bar out of the way here, is the option to apply some additional formatting to these rows and even cells. So depending on different conditions, and we can define this all on the Rover backend. We can hop over here. This is just kind of a quick mock-up, so bear with my color selections. We can actually make it so that a row might be highlighted. It can be bold, it can be italic. If a specific work center value right now here is, if we're going to engineering, we're going to highlight engineering in red, just to kind of demonstrate the feature capabilities we have here. But the idea here would be that, like, if something's running late, the status on a subassembly work order or something is running late, we can highlight that in red to demonstrate that this is something that needs attention. And here we can even have dynamic formatting between rows, between cells. So we'll see that here we've got this formatting being applied to every other row, whereas also engineering is consistently highlighted red, but inspection is not. So some additional options there. And what was kind of cool was when we were originally trying to talk about this conditional formatting, it seemed like a bit of a daunting task, and we weren't quite sure how we wanted to do this. So we referred over to Codex to kind of have it take a crack at designing this first shot. So I asked it, hey, develop a solution that allows us to accept conditional formatting. And so it kind of worked through. I can't really show you everything, I don't think, here, but kind of worked through, gave me a first pass. It wasn't quite right. It wasn't actually accepting Rover's formatting options. It was kind of trying to accept it from the components that were using this component. So I just followed up with it. Like, hey, this isn't exactly how it should be. Can we make it actually come from API responses? It reworked things. Took 3 minutes. And then I was like, okay, well, also make some unit tests to make sure that, we don't break this in the future or whatever. And it went through and did that. And sure enough, with maybe another 5 minutes of coding on the results here to just kind of clean some things up, this was the product. All we had to do was update the Rover backend and get this worked out. And turned out that the solution that Codex came up with was a bit more naive than I think we were originally thinking. And that was a good thing. It ended up being a much simpler and more straightforward solution. So kind of AI kind of made me feel a little silly there to start with. So it's kind of a cool outcome there.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. More generally speaking on this formatting, this is kind of a specific use case for one customer, but I think our intention is to open up this formatting to all at least lookup driven data tables, so that any of the customer search results or invoice results could eventually have this custom formatting applied that we would define in the lookup or potentially in the FDIC. We haven't quite figured out how that will work for the more generic items, but this should hopefully be coming in the future to more and more data tables. Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, unless you had other items, Alex, or anyone has questions, we'll throw it back over to Christian if you're ready, Christian?
I am ready, but I thought there was one question that I saw pop up.
Oh,
Or maybe
Did I
is
see?
Jennifer, I saw a hand raise up for a moment, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't have, sorry, I meant to give a thumbs up, but I pushed the wrong button.
Oh, okay.
Oh, gotcha.
Thank you.
No worries.
All right, so Christian, you can take over.
Yes. Let me share my screen. Okay. So as I was saying before, with the new ticketed time module, we're introducing this new tab interface. And some of the new changes include persistent filters. So now when you modify filters, and let's just add a status, they'll persist. So if you want to open up a ticket and then move back, it'll store those filters, so it'll keep them. So you're not having to change them when you go back and forth. And so when you make a new ticket, you can see some of the new changes we've made is the title is now at the top. And one of the new features when creating tickets and bills is you no longer need to create the ticket or bill first to add an attachment. You could add an attachment to a new ticket and save, and it'll add the attachment in sequence. So that's one of the new changes we made. But other than that, it's just a much better flow for creating tickets. And we think that this is going to be a major improvement, which should be going out today.
I think thanks to
One
the support
additional
team
thing
for
to highlight.
plugging in there
Sorry.
and contributing, feedback and testing and everything too, right? So Christian, it's been a good interactive experience, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Sorry, Greg, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make sure we highlighted that you can add attachments to individual billing items now, both when you're creating an initial new billing record, or you can add attachments to an existing billing record if you would want to.
I think that's a good call out. You could, Christian, maybe talk them through some of the relabeling of those sections, right? That was something I was suggesting that we try to kind of reconsider how we're presenting the different areas of that form.
Yeah, so so we've sort of relabeled some things. The attachments are now kind of under this collapsible section called ticket info. So this contains, the ticket form itself as well as its attachments. Add activity is new bills, and so we could add an attachment here.
Kind of, we switch to activity as the term rather than add time, because the reality is you're not necessarily always adding time when you're registering something here. Sometimes it could just be a comment, right? A follow-up. So it's more of thinking about this aspect of the ticket as the activity around the ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can see that the attachment's here, and you will have to save the bill to upload this attachment. So we'll do that. Oh, the ticket's closed, but now we can open it and save it. And you'll see it was updated and then billed, and then one attachment was added successfully. And so now in the activity history, we see the bill here, and then it shows that there's one attachment on this bill. I saw 2 hands up.
Christian, is there a way, this is Deborah, is there a way that when we change, this is what I'm experiencing, I'm going into a ticket and I'm adding some time and I noticed that I forgot to change it from PCR to time and material. If there is any time booked to it, it will not let us do that.
Yeah, I think that's a
back
back end limitation at the moment. We need to review that. I think the intention was that we were going to adjust that during this round of changes, but we'll review that and see where that stands.
It is on the list, as Greg said. Whoops, I kicked something off my desk there. As Greg said, that's a back end change at the moment where that validation is failing. I don't remember, Greg, that may have been one of the things that you and Mohit were talking about having Kathy change potentially while she was also in there making some of the adjustments around the emailing process. But yeah, the good news there is that that change effectively could happen at any point. unrelated to the release of these front end changes, because it is just the back end saying, no, wait a second, you can't do that.
So thanks for the friendly reminder, Deborah. We'll review that and make sure that that's still on the list to get taken care of.
Okay, one other thing. The status, we have a lot of statuses out there. Would it be okay if we could add a status called UAT for user acceptance testing? Because I keep going out there and seeing that I'm waiting on a customer's response when really my comment says it's in user acceptance testing.
Yeah, I think again the statuses are a bit of a work in progress as we're trying to formalize more of our workflow there. So I think a UAT type status is certainly a decent idea. So we'll review that and might be adding that in the future.
Greg, I would say we're not going to review that though, because that's not really a development item. The status
agreed.
values are just
not the development team. It's more of a process flow management discussion, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's bill control is the control form that indicates those statuses. So that's probably just more for management team to look at and say, hey, do we want the ERP to have to our instance of Rover to have UAT as a status? I would agree. Like, I don't see much of a problem with that, but just to single that out, right? It's a good idea, Deborah, but we won't need to go to the dev team.
Maybe support, and services can get together and say collectively what statuses do we feel like are missing, and we can kind of make the decision, reviewing all of those pieces of feedback at once.
Yep, I think the management team, especially in those areas, did a lot of that related to the PCR process too. So, and talking through all of that. So, my feedback was the statuses don't hold much weight yet within the organization, right? They're just descriptive fields. There's not a lot of reports and processes that are built up around them. So that makes them pretty malleable. Worst case scenario, you introduce a new status and maybe you want to go through and retroactively apply it to some other tickets. But otherwise, that's a pretty easy, benign thing to change.
Susie, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I guess I'm kind of missing. So we're adding an attachment to a bill record. Is that so that it gets emailed to the customer, or what happens with the attachment on a bill record? I'm looking at it from a different view, that those bill records roll up into the actual, what we're invoicing a customer for.
You answered it completely. It's so that if the email is going back to the customer with that activity, it can include an attachment. You got it. Because those are no longer, even though they go into the bill file, they're not always billing records, right? That's been the case for a while.
Right.
Sometimes those bill records have 0 hours. It's just in there to communicate to the customer or the contact, or to add some kind of commentary to the ticket. So that's also why we relabeled that section to activity, to try to convey, hey, this is now where you're seeing like the activity that's been registered to the system around the ticket. Sometimes that might be a conversation. Sometimes there might be some time billing. Sometimes it might be sharing of attachments or things, or kind of all of the above. If we were going to be more thorough with that, honestly, it becomes an argument to consider renaming the bill file, but I don't know that I care about going that far with it. Right. File name is kind of hidden behind the scenes anyway. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the ticket changes?
Yeah, I had well, now I'm on ticket changes. Other than, will it render the images if there are any? And then dovetailing into that is my question in the chat.
Oh, I missed your question in the chat. We'll review that. But yeah, I think at this point, Christian, if you want to go ahead and move on with the import-export.
Sure. Yeah.
Module.
Switch to this preview environment. Okay, so this is going to be the new data import-export module. And so one of the things you're able to do is select a file type. Currently, we're only exposing routing. And so once you select that, you have the option to download a template. And I could show you what that looks like. And so this is going to contain all the fields in sort of a JSON format. that will allow a user to sort of enter in information to either create a new routing or update one. And another option we have, and this is based on the lookup tables that are defined in the FDIC. So you're able to select a lookup table, and you're able to see all the routings, and you'd be able to export them as well. And so one thing I could do is do full documents. And then so we have two, and then so I'll export that. Now put in that file. And then you'll see it's similar to the template, but now this information is all pre-filled. And for these two routings, they have the operations. You can see it's A1 and 2, 3, and then for the other one, there's only 3. And so this will pre-fill that information, which would allow a user to modify it and then import it, and then they would be able to bulk update those files. Save that. And so from there, that's where the choose. We'll take that file we just had, and then so this is all sort of a work in progress. So currently you're able to see the data. This is the data that would get posted to the backend and validated. So you can see that this was all ingested. And then from there you can import, but currently it's not wired up, but I'll go ahead and run it. And you'll see that 2 records failed. And then you can view those errors. So this is kind of a lot, but generally what the idea is that it'll allow people to bulk import and export records and update those records. So something new that we've been working on that past couple of weeks.
I think this one's huge, but I don't want to bias the conversation here too much further beyond that reaction. I mean, is anybody else looking at this and going, oh, wait, this could be potentially huge?
I am. I mean, yeah.
I don't mind painting the picture if I have to, but
No, but having
Oh, yeah.
having done an implementation before and like on a different product and self-importing parts data as part of the implementation, it's like I could see this really helping in that kind of area. So
I don't. Is it just me? I think that's maybe Bill trying to speak, but it's really choppy.
Yeah, that was
I
Bill,
heard
but it
him
wasn't
pretty
choppy.
I heard
we heard him fine.
But anyways, yeah, absolutely. From data conversion standpoint, I mean, this is the step in the absolute right direction for sure.
Yeah, as Christian said, this is kind of early days of the import-export functionality, but we're pretty excited about the flexibility this will add. So very good. Christian, did you intend to highlight some codex functionality here too?
Yeah, sorry, that's right. So a few aspects of this was I did leverage codecs in a few spots of this. So I could show that here. One thing, codecs is pretty experimental. It did struggle on the import side of things. And one thing I had to do was sort of create a series of tests for it to test against to give it a sense of what to do exactly. But once I got the import working, the export was actually completely written by codecs. So outside of writing like 6 or 7 tests of what it should look like, it was able to fully build out this functionality. And so, I asked it one question, and we set this up so it could actually run the tests that are currently in our folder. And it was generally able to get really, really close. I had to follow up on a different codex sort of area to follow up, but generally it did a great job. It even was able to write the function and then test it, and then it actually even created its own test to go beyond that. And then, like I said, I had to follow up with a second test to get it to fully work, but it got 95% of the way there for the exporting portion of this module. So it did a pretty good job. It's a very impressive tool.
Awesome. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, so I mean, I think generally speaking, we're trying to make codecs a new part of our general process on the web dev side of things. But it's not only for the web dev side of things. Andrew, I don't know, were you prepared to chime in and show a little bit of the QM side of things?
Yeah, I can show some stuff.
I actually have one more QM
sorry,
to show
sorry,
too.
Christian.
Yeah, I don't want
And
to
while you're
steal
on there, go
Andrew's
ahead.
thunder, but yeah, sorry. So recently there was an issue with our ACE $WS lookup. It wasn't converting the new lines and carrots characters, and this was already solved. But to see what Codex could do, I posed the question, and it actually was able to do it. But one thing it did was use convert versus replace, which is how we solved it. And I actually followed up a second question, for OpenQM, is convert a better option than replace? And it actually read a few files in the sort of repository of ACE files or ACE programs, and it even referenced $ship E2 file, which uses converts rather than replace. And so, it has some general background information on OpenQM. It's able to read files and get a sense of how certain programs are written, and it's able to use that and leverage that information. So it solved it basically in the same way, but it was just something I wanted to test out, which was pretty cool to see.
All right, great. Andrew, can we hand it over to you?
Sure. So, one of the things I'm going to dip into the nerdy realm real quick. Don't worry, I'll escape back out relatively quickly. One of the reasons that the web team has been able to utilize Codex as much as they have is because all of their development is in Git, which is version tracking, making sure we're keeping track of different versions of code. Something that most of us or a lot of us might not know is that our pick code is actually in GitHub. So this is the Rover core repo, and it's got our ACE and M3. So if I dig in, BP, right, it's got all of our code or source code here. I can look at the history, and this will look very similar to kind of a mod R1 report showing all the modifications that have been done. I'll use Kathy's mod as my guinea pig. Sorry, Kathy, if you're here. But we can look at these and just kind of quickly see, okay, I'm looking at ship E2, what was changed, right? So it looks like Kathy added this add tariff subroutine, and you get to see all the changes that have been done, whether it's additions or subtractions. You get to see all that. But since that stuff is in GitHub, we can use Codex against it. And like Christian showed, it has context for OpenQM and understands pick code. There are some limitations here. We only have the M3 BP and ACE BP FDICT. So I'm in the background. I've been slowly adding more things to change tracking. But I used this the other day. I just asked it for analysis. Didn't really ask it to code anything. Just quickly said, hey, in these programs, these are our setup routines we use. There's a section that sets all these cue pointers, which is a very pick thing, right? That's not really a concept anywhere else. It understood what I was saying, went through and spit out this beautiful little table telling me, hey, ACE BP is targeting this file and it's set in both of these routines, or security hist is being set in one and not the other. So that saved me a ton of time of just actually going through and analyzing what it was doing, and it was correct. And that saved me time there. I've had some things. It gave me a decent suggestion on a bug. I just kicked this one off a little bit ago, kind of exploring the idea of adding coupons to web point of sale, and just to see what the back end would be needed. I prompted it, hey, validate SO and V2. Use SOE and SOE sub as the guide for coupons. And I mean, this isn't perfect. Like, it needs some work, but it did a ton of the grunt work for me, and it looks on very quick inspection pretty close, if not right on, for let's say 80 to 90% of this. But yeah, it's very promising even on the pick side for us on what it can do and what it can accomplish.
Did you see what model that used?
Somebody else might have to answer that one. I just used the thing, man.
I think it's in the logs. It would tell us what model it used. I think it's using GP 4.0 generally.
I think it does 4.1 now, but I can't remember.
Is it?
Andrew, you said something interesting though, which is one of the things I had it working on, and I think that's interesting because you said things plural, and like you can do multiple things at the same time in Chat GPT, kind of by just having back and forth between a couple different conversations. But I think that's a really interesting aspect to Codex here is that it's really giving you not just one assistant you can farm something out to. You can kick one task off and then turn around and kick off another and turn around and kick off another, right? And you're a little bit you're less limited by its ability to go process things in parallel. You're more limited by your ability to engage with it in those multiple streams in parallel, which is an interesting thing to pivot towards. But it's very powerful and intriguing from that perspective.
Another thing I meant to say, we are on the Rover pick side, we're a little limited with Codex at the moment based on our deployment setup. So like the web team, when they're working on their stuff, they can have it create a PR or create that change and stage it so they can edit it and then submit it. Our deployment process on the pick side precludes us from doing that currently. However, I'm looking at fixing that little issue here in the nearish future.
I'm excited to hear you call it a little issue. So
Maybe I'm being optimistic.
that's good. Yeah, but Mike's point about being able to queue up tasks for it is really powerful. And I think on the web dev side, where our intention is to start kind of giving it a first pass at just about everything we're coding. So as part of our sprint planning, I think our goal would be to go through what we want to accomplish that week and set up a number of issues as just targeted toward Codex first. Let it take the first pass, then we review it and tweak it from there. So our hope is that it can add quite a bit of productivity to our side of things. Any other questions or comments?
AI will not take the job of programmers. AI will take the job of programmers that don't use AI.
That's the rumor.
I think you're, I guess, John, you're saying that like seriously, but also a little tongue in cheek. I do think it's an important thing to address, though, right, in terms of organizational perspective on this stuff. And 100% my perspective on this at the moment, based off of our experiences, my experiences, listening to other people outside the company's experiences, listening to some of the founders of these platforms talk about these things. I do not view this as a way to replace people. I view it as a way to allow our people to become more efficient and effective with their time, right? And so, to John's point, yeah, like we're not a stone's throw away from a company only having an AI-based development team. Curtis, I don't know if you're on the call, but I could explain the stone's throw cliche to you at some other point. But we are, right on our doorstep today, able to now reimagine how we do a lot of the work that we do. And it centers around being AI first in our mindset and approach. Kind of similar to how, 20 years ago, people had to start getting used to like, well, before I just rush out and solve for this problem, let me go Google and see if somebody else has solved this problem. Let me go to Stack Overflow and see if somebody else has solved this problem before I just dedicate my time to reinventing the wheel and rediscovering that. So there's a bit of a mindset shift that has to occur here. But it is very exciting, right?
Okay.
Gosh, maybe
well,
I'm alone on that. Curtis
Well-
isn't on the call, so that joke
Well-
didn't land. Someone else will have to relay it to him.
I'll
But
make sure I explain it to him.
yeah, he never gets my cliches, so that just makes me feel old. But
More to come on this topic for sure.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then we'll call that a wrap for our May Demo Day. Thank you, everyone, for attending.